Titus. I'm VP to go-to-market at Civic, where we're building authentication tools for the AI era. This podcast is about the future of auth, from secure onboarding to agent permissions and everything in between. Now, before we begin, I want to give a shout out to podcast.today for helping listeners discover the best new podcast episodes. If you're looking for something new to listen to, you should definitely check them out at podcast.today. And also, please don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on your favorite platform. Your support makes a huge difference. Today, we're joined by Chetan Nandakumar from Flora, where he's building a monetized MCP marketplace using a new blockchain payment standard that was released a few months ago. We first connected a few months ago when Civic was in the early stages of exploring AI agent tooling, and then reconnected in person at ECC. We'll dive into cool ways to monetize Model Context Protocol, or MCP, applications today. Chetan, thank you for joining us. Now, I want to kick things off by giving you a chance to tell people the story of how you got into AI. You've worn a lot of hats, like from Berkeley to traveling, AI research, science writing. What's kind of the theme that connected all the dots for you?
Yeah, great question. For me, it was actually consciousness. So I was just really, when I was 16, I got really fascinated by the fact that I was conscious. I suddenly was like, wow, I'm conscious of consciousness. And what is this? And I wanted to, I was curious. I wanted to learn more about what that was. And so they sent me down a number of tracks. I got very interested in spirituality and meditation. And I also got very interested in AI, because you essentially had this machine that could think, that could beat me at computer games and whatnot. And it was a piece of plastic. And I was fascinated that that was even possible. So in terms of my own career, I got a PhD at the intersection of AI and neuroscience, because once I was curious about how machines think, I got interested in, well, how do I think? How does my brain work? And the relationship in between the two.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think we all have like our own personal stories, how you got into it. I think curiosity is driving a lot of people into the space, but also like I think the pure automation ethos of like, how do we make things more efficient? How do we leverage kind of these tools that are able to deliver smarter and smarter applications? And I mean, for me, like 2016, when I discovered deep learning, that was like I think the AI breakthrough. Because we've all seen the movies, we've all seen like the Terminators and all the like kind of early AI depictions. I was like, well, can you actually make this do something useful instead of destroy humanity? And then, well, now we have large language models and all this cool stuff. But speaking of trends and things that are happening today, what are you seeing in terms of like how builders are implementing AI agents and how that market is evolving? Because it's all moving pretty fast.
Yeah, it's moving very, very quickly, and we're seeing a big shift in the last year or so, and a lot of announcements recently. So I think that the AI agent thesis has been around for a bit of time, at least in certain circles and tech circles, and now we're seeing it really hit the mainstream. Right now, I'm sure a lot of viewers have seen the announcements from Perplexity around an agentic browser, and OpenAI just introduced agentic capabilities into ChatGPT. So we're seeing it really hit the mainstream, but there are also a lot of products, for enterprise and SMBs that, use agents in different ways.
Yeah, I mean, that's ever since the like MCP protocol got introduced, I think people are finding more and more creative ways to use agentic AI in their workflows. But like also even without that, being able to accelerate your work by simply like talking to ChatGPT or Claude or whatever language model you're using is super efficient, or have it do deep research for you is something that's exciting. We just got off a super cool webinar where we vibe coded like Civic Auth, for example, with a Web3 wallet, and we were able to send transactions in less than like I think 15 minutes all in all, with all the explanations and all kind of the troubleshooting and just pure vibe coding, which is like not something you could have done a year and a half ago, for example.
Yeah. Well,
cool. So let's dive into your work at Flora. What is it? What are you guys building? What's exciting about it?
Yeah, so essentially what Flora is, it's an agentic marketplace that allows AI agents to autonomously find and purchase resources. And that could be data, it could be services, a whole variety of things. And a key part of our unique angle, which we have on this, is that we want to do this fully on open standards. because we believe that doing so offers a lot of advantages for really delivering value for users. It creates a much greater surface area for innovation, a whole variety of things. And so what we've done is that we're essentially building this with MCP as a backbone, and specifically we found a way to monetize MCP. So MCP, and we can chat about it later, but it's essentially didn't have monetization when it was first introduced, and there's a way to actually make that work. And so we've created a new open source project called Monetized MCP. And so essentially what Flora is that it's a marketplace of monetized MCP servers. And so that's the essence of what we're building. And then we're seeing a really exciting use case right now with workplace automation, and also with some other exciting spaces with DeFi and a few other verticals as well.
Awesome. And I think I always like to start off these conversations like getting people's takes, experts' takes on MCP itself. Like how would you explain it to like the viewers who are not super familiar about it, maybe haven't heard about it? Like, how would you explain it, like super high level?
Yeah, I think in a very simple way, I think the way I explain it is that it's an API that's AI friendly, which essentially means that an LLM can call it and access it at the very basic level. And there's more as well to it, but that's the simplest way to think about it. So essentially with MCP, your LLM, your Claude, your ChatGPT, whatever AI agent you're using, or even one in the cloud, can now use an external resource, whether that's a service or a data feed or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's a good one. I remember like a few years ago when we were building RAGs, essentially you'd have to do the API call yourself and then package the payload and then do the OpenAI call and then wait for the response. And then like if you need another follow-up prompt, do the same thing again. And it was a pretty kind of mechanical process. And I think MCP kind of streamlines that really, really well.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's say like you've got a tool or service, like how would your agent find it, understand it, and call it dynamically? Like you mentioned API, like how does that work? How would that flow of discovery look like?
Yeah, so basically, in our process, we're going to have a marketplace, and then that essentially makes it easy for agents to basically to interact with our marketplace. And that agent could be either an agent you're interacting with like Claude or ChatGPT, and we're going to have basically little plugins that essentially make that work, or it could be like a LangChain agent or an agent in the cloud. And so essentially that agent would be able to query our marketplace to do a search to see, I'm looking for X, Y, or Z. And then when there's a match, when it finds a service it wants to interact with, it can easily make a transaction with that service and purchase something from that service.
So when you're saying a service, would that be just like calling an API endpoint, or is it like a full-blown AI agent that does something with an end value to the user? Like, what does that look like?
It could be anything really. So it's just there's a MCP interface which says, hey, here are the functions you can call, and then how those functions are implemented on the services side is up to the service. It could be an AI interface. It could just be a regular purchase flow. It could be whatever it is.
Yeah, makes sense. So still, I mean, the space is pretty early. It's, as we said, evolving pretty quickly, and that generates like some problems people run into. Like, for example, if you're vibe coding, you'll get some errors, and you need to like troubleshoot those. Like when it comes to MCP building, what do you feel like is a little rough or missing from the ecosystem? What still needs to be kind of refined and built?
Well, one thing I just want to share a little bit of some use cases so folks can get their head around what we're building, and then I'll jump into this question.
Sure.
So with our marketplace, one use case is in DeFi. So essentially, a DeFi agent can autonomously find and purchase data. And so now in an a la carte fashion, so that data can inform its investing or trading strategy. So, in the past, you needed a human to essentially open an account, put in a credit card, and get an API key. And with our tooling, that can be fully autonomous. So no humans required in the loop. And we think that's really good. To remove friction from the process really just supports the ecosystem in general. And we can also imagine, like with workplace automation, that you could want to kick off an agentic workflow with services, whether that be marketing a website or whether that be like finding and hiring a freelancer to execute on a job. And of course, there'll be proper checks with the user to make sure that every purchase is confirmed. But the idea is that when we integrate with these different services, you can really automate a lot and offer a lot of value in a lot of different domains. And so those are the two that we're thinking about right now. In answer to your question in terms of MCP and what's missing right now, it was really, I mean, I think it's helpful to give a little context for the users and for the viewers right now about MCP and how it kind of came to be. And essentially, it was developed by Anthropic, and essentially the idea is that Claude was trained on your on the internet's data, but it didn't have any visibility of your data. All the data on your, let's say, hard disk or in your file system or in a database or in an external service like a Slack or a GitHub or whatever it was. And so it was essentially kind of a set of connectors that would connect the LLM to these external services and data sources. And now when that happens, that your LM could do interesting things across all of these systems, which could be super exciting. And so it was sort of like, it was rolled out at the end of November last year. I remember when it was announced, and it was super exciting, and it just took off because it essentially meant that AIs could have access to way more things. It could do many more interesting things. And so now it's sort of folks are stepping back and seeing how it's really turning into a dominant internet protocol. If we think about HTTP in the 90s and how that was so foundational for the internet because it allowed for interoperability. And from there, all this suite of applications opened up from that. The same is true with MCP. So it really is a protocol which opens up a whole new suite of possibilities. And so now there's a lot of folks who are jumping in and helping to turn this from kind of a hobby, so to speak, or a kind of a side project into something that can really accommodate a lot of different types of use cases. So there's a few issues right now with security and with standardization and different things. And so folks are jumping in and filling in the gaps. And from our point, we think that one of the key missing gaps is monetization, because that wasn't baked into the original framing of the protocol. And that's where we want to focus.
Yep, agree 100%. And I think that there's still a composability aspect to it. Like, how do you combine these MCP servers together, and how do you place them within your workflow? There's big communities around workflow automation by sequencing steps in your workflow with the LLM or with the MCP servers. But also there's point solutions that just work for me. Like running a cohort analysis on a Postgres database output is something that was a pretty big a no-brainer now versus a few years ago where you just have to write your own SQL code and joins and whatnot. The LLM kind of does that for you, and then also does a nice little chart.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and now we have MCP tools that specifically connect into Postgres, right? So you can have that conversation directly in your cloud desktop or in your coding environment. So no hassle there. So when we talk about orchestration or agents working together, how close do you think we are to something like that happening? Are there any missing pieces? Is it just a question about building more MCPs? I think that's almost a big dream of the space where can we automate more complex workflows when it comes to not just the cohort analysis that I talked about, but maybe something more kind of an entire work stream.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what we're trying to build and make possible. So essentially building this marketplace that would have essentially monetized services. So essentially when we think about what type of ecosystem is really sustainable, monetization has to be it. Otherwise folks don't have the funds to maintain their services. And so our real goal is to sort of onboard a whole variety of different types of services. If we think about, at the first web, every business needed a website. That was a thing back in the 90s. And now I believe that every business also needs an MCP server that can now, because now agentic workflows are really going to take over how things really happen on the planet. So we would love, I'm sure there's going to be other folks also in the space, but we would love to be part of that ecosystem, which helps coordinate MCP servers around agentic workflows.
As you're looking at these MCP servers and talking to builders and looking at the ecosystem, what are some of the trends around monetization that you're seeing? How are builders thinking about monetizing their MCP servers?
So the basic way right now is that you essentially need an API key. So that means that a human needs to open an account, put in a credit card, and get an API key. And then that API key is plugged into the MCP server that would then obviously bill it or appropriate into your account. And I believe that this is the way of the past. Is essentially this is a very manual process. That imagine if in the future, imagine if you want to give a task to your agent and it needs to interact with the service. If it now has to poke you to now go and leave what you're doing and open the account and get the API key and paste it back in. Well, that's not really how I think the future is going to work. I think there has to be a way for that agent to be able to say, hey, I want to use service X, and then to be able to interact with it and transact with it after you've given a permission, of course, but it could do it on its own to really interact with that resource.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I've been thinking about this in the past couple of days, like as we're vibe coding and like we're enabling all these like deployment of tooling with just like prompting, this part is still the part that creates friction with the users. Like, for example, even with Civic Auth, right? You need to go and get your client ID and then paste that into kind of the context of the app you're building in your environment variable. And then the app will work. And what if the agent can go and grab that for you and then create that end file, update it, and now you're ready to go. And it's all tied to your original identity and the authentication you did initially, so that you're ready to go without having to break that flow.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think that's where the world's going, and this could apply to buying anything. Like you can buy API calls, you can buy access to like, I don't know, mapping, you can buy access to whatever you compute, like all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
100%. And then, so I think the missing piece up until a few months ago for a lot of this was payment. And I think that's the piece that was exciting for me when I saw the new standards emerge. Like, what are some of the trends that you're seeing when people pay for MCP access? How should people think about it? Because like I think we're all kind of in the mind frame of, well, we have our credit card saved somewhere, either in Google Pay or like in Stripe or whatever we're using to pay on a regular basis through our browser. How will agents pay for things?
Yeah, I think that's TBD right now. And so our monetized MCP standard wants to be inclusive of all standards out there. So, our business is not in a monetized MCP, it's in the marketplace. So we want to support fiat and crypto and different things. I do think that crypto offers a lot of advantages. It was really built to be digital first payment system rather than fiat, which wasn't really designed with a digital mindset in the beginning. It's sort of been co-opted. And so that's why there's a lot of clunkiness, a lot of security issues with fiat solutions like Stripe and different things. And so I like crypto for a lot of reasons. Like with crypto solutions, the payment credentials are never being sent over the internet. So everything is done in a totally different architecture. And so I really think that crypto has a real place with AI agent payments. But we'll see how things unfold. I think that's left to the market to decide.
Yes, you mentioned monetized MCP and Flora, and those are different. Can you kind of explain to the audience like how to think about these two projects that you're working on and how do they fit together in the bigger picture?
Sure. So monetized MCP is just a set of libraries that allows an MCP server to accept programmatic payments. And so that's open source and that's an open project, and hopefully becomes a kind of a bit of a standard in the industry. And then Flora is a marketplace of these monetized MCP servers. So essentially, that's our business, and so we are going to be so monetized MCP allows us to build a marketplace of monetized services.
Gotcha. That's super helpful. So I'll dive deeper into kind of the crypto payment rails that you mentioned earlier. I know how many people are familiar with it. The new payment protocol is called X402. I think that's the piece that is now enabling a lot of the stablecoin payments in the space, but not just for like MCPs. Like it's an automatic payment protocol that originates from what's it called? The 402 error from back in the day. We had 404, page not found. 402 is actually payment not found. But because we didn't have online payments for a long time, and for sure we didn't have autonomous payments. We still don't in Web 2. Only in Web 3 we have that with like automatic clearing through the on-chain transaction. I think this is, for me at least, like was super exciting when I saw it being rolled out. What's your take on it? Why do builders need to care about it?
Yeah. So essentially, I think you did a great intro of the protocol itself, and it was released by Coinbase, I think, a month or two ago. So super recently. Yeah, so their whole vision is that we need to, now that we have crypto on the scene and we can do payments easily on the internet, we should, come back to the original vision of the web, where payments were part of the picture of how websites could work. And so the idea with X402 is as a way to monetize your API. So now they sort of fill in that missing gap. So now if you have API endpoints, you can now put a price for each one of these endpoints. And then a user or an agent can pay that in a USDC stablecoin. And so what we've done is that it was so in line with how we were thinking with our products, is that we've actually rolled it into Moneta's MCP. So this is the first payment standard that we support, which is X402. It basically allows for or enables stable coin payments and verification on the base chain.
Awesome. So let's try to bring this more in the kind of user imagination. In a future where there's a thriving ecosystem of MCP builders, they're using monetized MCP and they're listing their monetized MCPs on Flora using this for X402 or other payment methods. What does that world look like? What can people do with AI agents then that they couldn't do today?
Yeah. So right now we're seeing that AI agents, are in the infancy. And so, if we look at, Perplexity and OpenAI, they are basically doing things like with browser control. So an agent is basically be able to click on a browser in a way kind of like a human would, to be able to do workflows there. And I think that's a kind of a stopgap, to be honest, because browser interfaces are really built for humans, and they're not really built for agents. So they're not 100%. They're a little clunky. They're a little bit slow. And then so that's one area of agents. And then another area of agents is that we're seeing some agentic automation with SaaS services. So you can essentially create automations where you can, like you pull information from Google Sheets, and then you send an email via Gmail for everyone in every email that's listed. And you can do these automations, kind of like Zapier, agentic Zapier. And there's a few different products in that vein. And that's great. We think that that's a great step forward to having more of agentic workflows. And then we think that what we're building is a third thing, which is essentially we want those sort of agentic workflows, but with any service out there on the web. So the idea is that in an AI native way, where that means that there's an MCP server, so that there's so now instead of clicking through websites, there's a very standardized way to interact with the service in a way that's dependable, reliable, and secure. And so we can imagine a whole variety of things. So right now we're going to launch with DeFi as one of our use cases. So DeFi agents can actually do stuff autonomously. We're talking to other services. One exciting sort of vertical that we're exploring is around content. So in the kind of workplace automation vertical I was mentioning, we're talking to content producers, and they are publications and outfits like that. And then what they are doing is they want to monetize their content in agentic workflows. So right now, if you go to OpenAI or Perplexity, you can do a deep research task, and that will look at do research with news and information that's freely available on the web, but it can't look at content that's behind a paywall. So that's what we can really offer through this integration. So now you could say, hey, I want to do deep research with industry leading reports, and it can say, okay, well, each report costs X amount of dollars. You can greenlight that, and then you can create that report. And we think that that's really exciting, that you could combine AI with what was, previously behind closed doors and behind subscriptions, which a lot of times folks don't want to pay, but they're willing to pay things in an a la carte fashion. And we can kind of make that all possible in a really kind of easy to use experience.
Yeah, I feel like it'll change the way we consume, like, for example, even books. Like you want to do a report on like 3 books on this industry, like if there are new ways to do things, you can like have the agent go out and buy these 3 books and then do a deep research on it and give you a report. And you have to spend 3 weeks reading the entire book.
Exactly.
And to get like 3 things that you need from it. which is I think really extremely cool, because we started off, I think, online with the paradigm of like everything should be free, and the reality is stuff isn't free, because people produce it, they produce it using their time, their effort, their expertise, and a lot of that needs to be paid in some form or another. Now, we had the advertising model for the longest of time, right? People just like monetize eyeballs ever since like the like 90s. I think now we're getting to a point where I think I saw Cloudflare released a paper like
Crawl.
crawl. Yes, paper crawl. That's what they call it. Paper crawl, which is exactly addressing this kind of issue. Is like, well, how do you monetize this server usage? Because ultimately, like, if somebody's coming in with an AI agent to your property, website or app or API or report, whatever you have, they're consuming some sort of resource there from you. You have to pay for that server time and for the space, the storage, and spin it up, show it to them. They get what they need, and then they leave. I think with monetized MCP, like, I think there's a really clear path. Like, hey, now you can just kind of pay your way through, and then everybody wins. Like, I get through. The owner of that content gets paid, and I think there's a world where we're going to have so many AI agents that there's going to be a queue. There's going to be a line of agents trying to get to your content, because server capacity is still unfortunately limited, and then not everybody has like huge bandwidth. So if you're exceeding your bandwidth and all of the like AI agents are trying to get in, of course you're going to prioritize the ones who've paid. And if there's any bandwidth left, then you're going to allow the free ones. But ultimately, you don't want to allow the free, like random access or anything like that. You want to be able to prioritize basically the ones who pay for it. And that creates a very interesting model. Maybe there's a future where we'll have a bidding marketplace for like access to certain resources that are scarce and in high demand, right? Like an MCP server that does something really well, that, I don't know, 1 million people want. I mean, that needs to, one, scale the server itself, and then two, like, people will pay for it, and it'll go up in price as things do when they're in high demand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, I mean, for me, that's a super exciting world. I think coming back to the MCP ecosystem itself, if somebody's just starting off or wants to keep up with the space, like, where should they start? Where would you advise them to check out first?
Yeah, I think that Claude is sorry, not Claude, but Anthropic has some great primers and kind of overview. I think that's a great place to start to really kind of get going. And I think after that, there's so much content online now. There's a lot of folks who've done, MCP 101 and MCP intro videos, and there's so much content, and really just to follow. Everyone has a different background, and so it's good to just maybe go on the internet and see who really kind of speaks to you, or comes to your industry, or from your technical background, or at the same level, so that you can it's a good access point. But there's so much content that I think that folks can easily get information. The last thing I would say is the AI tools are also great. So this is a great way that I think I think a lot of us learn now, is go to ChatGPT or Perplexity and ask it for a brief tutorial on whatever topic it is, and it does a pretty good job usually.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of our habits more and more. Just going to like your favorite agent is like, hey, go search for this topic and give me the latest on it from the past like 14 days or whatever, past 2 weeks. Yep. Or just go on X and LinkedIn and YouTube and follow some people that have good traction. But I will say, like, try to test some of these solutions, especially like if people are like doing demos and showing like GitHub links, like that's really where the magic happens. If you're able to deploy something yourself, even if it's localhost, just like open up a Cursor, free account. You have to get the paid version. But if you're able to spin that up on your own, like a localhost MCP server that you vibe coded with the help of like some example repo, and then add like the monetized MCP like protocol to it and see how that works, and then add like payments and all that fun stuff to it, and then you're ready when Flora launches.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'd say that's I think the mindset that I'm trying to promote more and more. Like, as like, even if you're not like a hardcore software engineer, like I'm certainly not. I don't have a CS degree or anything, but now we're all kind of we're all enabled by these tools to be able to execute even these like more seemingly complex tasks, like deploying an MCP server.
Exactly. Yeah, it's well put.
Awesome. As we kind of wrap up, what are some of the cool projects, experiments, write-ups you're working on? Where should people follow you? Anything you want to announce?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a few things. So they can follow us, follow me on Twitter, Chetan _ Guevara. So I think that'll be other show notes, Titus. That'll be
yeah, for sure. We'll put that in the show notes. I'll put actually a caption as well.
Yeah. So so my Twitter handle with my first name _ Guevara, like Che Guevara. That's one. Another is our company website, Flora. So that's Flora _ AI on Twitter or X. We are going to be going live in a few weeks. It'll be kind of a soft launch, so everyone's welcome. It'll be in August, and we're also going to be co-sponsoring a hackathon with Coinbase that'll be happening August 9th and 10th in New York City. And so the applications are open. So if you are a team, it's targeted for builders who are building products and shipping products. So if you are in that category, we'd love to have you. Please apply. And we'll also send the link to Titus, who will share it in the show notes. And that's called Code NYC, hosted by Coinbase.
Okay, so it's called Code NYC.
Specifically, what we're looking for in terms of Flora as part of that hackathon is people who are building services that want to be monetized and want to be discoverable. So that if that's you, if you're building any service that could be useful for a human or an AI agent in a monetized fashion, kind of in this new automated framework, which we spoke about today, it could be a great fit for the hackathon.
Awesome. So keep an eye out for it. Apply if you're ready. If you're building something in the MCP space, this is a cool place to join other builders. So big thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Chetan, for the awesome chat. Our listeners, as always, if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow us on your favorite platform. It helps us bring you more content. And don't forget to check out what we do at civic.com, learn more about us, and follow us for our next episode.